Hi, this is Carrie Shell from On Point Quilter. In last week's video tutorial, I showed you how I drafted the Summer Sunburst block using patch draw. In this week's video, I will show you the setting using custom set. Now I want to go ahead and work on quilt, and for this one I want a quilt, new quilt, and I'm going to do a custom set. And I'm going to delete my borders because this is going to be a circular quilt. I'm going to go ahead and for now leave the layout at 48 by 48. I'm going to go into layer 1, set my block, and I'm going to bring that first block in, and I'm going to use the adjust tool, and I'm going to change it to 48 by 48. And I'm going to center it horizontally and vertically. And then I'm going to bring my second block in. And I want this one to be 49 because I want it to actually be my binding. It probably should be actually 48.5. Now, the maximum block size is 48, but I can change that. So if I go into layout, all styles, I'm going to change that maximum size of blocks from 48 to 49, and I'll click on OK. Now I can click on this block and I can make it 48.5 by 48.5, which will give me a 1/4 inch border, and I'm going to center that horizontally and vertically, and I'm going to send it to the back. So I'm going to click on that button and it is there. Now I do need to change that coloration. So what color do I want to use for that? It's always the challenge. And then what I can also do, first of all, I'm going to get rid of this background. And I selected the select tool, and I'm going to delete the show grid, and I'm going to refresh. And now all of my stray items in the back have disappeared. So I'm going to go ahead and add that to the sketchbook, and I am complete. Now, to check that this is going to work with 2.5 inch strips, I can go ahead and use the select tool, select the block, and I'm going to do a print, and I'm going to do rotary cutting instructions. And I am going to make sure that it's sized from the quilt, do a preview, and I'm going to zoom in on one of the pages. Obviously got a lot of different items, and I'm not going to actually use this for cutting, but what I wanted to do was confirm that the strips for each of these are 2.5 inches. So that tells me that this is going to work perfectly with a 2.5 inch strip. Now, if the number had said something else, I would actually just go ahead and play with the size of my quilt, and I would start resizing it to get it to the point that it would actually use the 2.5 inch strips. So this one works, so I am ready to start cutting those strips and creating my wedges. To finish up my quilt, I decided I would add some quilting designs, and I had created a design in Art and Stitch that I thought might work for this quilt. So I'm going to, my next step is going to be to bring this in to Electric Quilt. So I'm going to go to Library, Embroidery Library, and I'm going to import from an EXP file. And I had saved my EXP file in one of my Art and Stitch folders. And I'm going to take my two designs and I'm going to open them. and I don't worry about some of the error messages because they both come in here. And now I will select both of those EXP files, and I'm just going to add those directly to my sketchbook and select Close. Now I'm going to go to Layer 3, and I'm going to Set Embroidery, and I'm going to go to the last designs that I just added, and I'm going to drag them in. And I want to make sure Snap to Grid is off, and Show Grid and Snap to Grid. And I will use the Adjust tool, and I will position this. And I think that's a little bit big, so I'm going to go ahead and change that to 47 by 47 so that it fits. And that still looks a little big. I'm not quite sure why, because I think the quilt is 48, but let me just bring that down to 46 by 46. And I can do the small movements by using the Control key and the arrow keys on my keyboard to get things centered the way I would like them centered. And now I will set embroidery, and I'll take that smaller design which I wanted for the center, and I'll bring that in. And I'm going to just zoom in so I can look at how well I've centered that. And I'll use the Adjust tool on that. And make sure that's centered as well. Now what I will do is I will use my Set Thread tool, and I think I'm going to use a blue, and right now it's on the brush tool, and I'm actually going to change that to the swap thread, and that way I can do everything at once. And I selected one of the threads, and I have now finished my embroidery. So I will zoom out so I can see the entire design, and I can now add that to the sketchbook. Thanks so much for watching. For additional tips and techniques, please subscribe to my weekly newsletter at www.onpointquilter.com.